Well, hello, and welcome again to the 2012fad.com. I'll be your host for this evening, and my name is Charlie Bluehawk. Last night, we talked about a race of cowards, and how anybody like our masters who strike out at us from the dark, from the shadows, and use others to do their dirty work, or they will only attack the weak, the helpless, the hopeless, or the defenseless, and only in the dark, and only when there are 20 of them and one of you. That's a race of cowards, and if you ever watch Ben Bernanke, or Obama, or the Clintons, or the Bushes on camera, you can see how arrogant they are, and how condescending and belittling they are towards us. But if you look really close, if you turn off the sound, for example, you can see the looks in their eyes, their faces. They're terrified. They're terrified of us. They're afraid of us. Because at the most conservative estimate, we outnumber them 1,000,000 to 1. And they know that if we ever find out what they're really doing to us, they're gone. But anyway, we were talking, as I say, last night about a race of cowards and how the story has really taken on a life of its own. And it's taken us into a direction that I never saw coming. And so we'll continue, and hopefully we'll conclude it soon and move on, because I don't really actually like this story. I don't like it at all. But the facts, the evidence, it's just overwhelming. And the conclusion just can't be avoided. I'd really like to. But this is the kind of thing I've been doing for the last 25 years in the corporate world, all over the world, where I will be asked to come in and solve a problem, and they'll tell me what they think the problem is, and I'll pretty much know better. But then I follow the facts, and I follow the facts wherever they lead me to. And that gets me to solving the problem. So we're going to recap, and this is going to take some time, so please bear with me. It all begins really with the fact that Western scientists have finally admitted that from the center of our own galaxy, which is one of millions, maybe billions of galaxies inside of this universe where you and I live, a universe that is itself inside of a bubble. For lack of a better term, it's a soap bubble. And our universe exists, where you and I live, inside of a soap bubble. And as with all soap bubbles, you never find one, you find lots of them. So outside of our soap bubble, there are other soap bubbles, probably with universes of their own. But inside this particular bubble universe where you and I live, Western scientists have again, and I keep saying Western scientists because from what I've seen, Western scientists are the last people in the world to deal with reality. For example, CNN and the BBC, the official mouthpieces of our masters, have discovered a dead brown dwarf star. One time, half the time they say it's outside the orbit of Pluto, the other half the time they say the dead brown dwarf star is inside the plane of our solar system. And they're quite astonished to discover this. You and I have been talking about this for 40 years. So when I say Western scientists have discovered, that means the last person in the row has finally gotten the information. And you can look this up on the internet. It's public information now. So many Western scientists have finally admitted there are at least 10 different dimensions, 10 different realities coexisting in this bubble universe where you and I live. And there are 9 other versions of you and me having this talk. But we're all living in exactly the same space and exactly the same time. And we can do that because we all vibrate at a different frequency. It's the reason that country western music can be broadcast from one radio station, and classical rock music can be broadcast from another radio station. And you can choose between which station you want to listen to. But those waves exist in the same space and the same time because they are at different frequencies. And that's the simplistic version of different realities. And you and I can see each other, talk to each other, pet the cat, have a cup of coffee, because the atoms in our bodies are all vibrating at the same rate. We can all interact because we're set at the same frequency. But no matter what dimension you live in this particular bubble universe, there is a burst of energy from the center of our galaxy. And this burst of energy, of information, is pulsing at us at a rate of trillions of times every second. That's a lot of energy. That's a lot of information. 1 trillion times. I can't even tell you how many zeros that is behind a 1. It's more than the human mind can comprehend. I can barely comprehend 100, but then that's just me. So what can this information be? Why is someone or something broadcasting this information throughout our entire galaxy? That's a lot of energy. It's a lot of information. Other Western scientists, and again, the last people in line to know anything in our world, Western scientists are now beginning to understand that the DNA in our bodies holds no information at all. None. Instead, it's the physical design of the chromosomes, the 22 pair of chromosomes each of us has in our bodies. It's the physical design of the chromosome that's an antenna. It's a receptor. It's a receiver. Just like your TV, just like your radio, just like your cell phone. It receives information being broadcast to it. And it's that information that's being broadcast from somewhere, center of the galaxy, for example, that your chromosomes in your body pick up. Now, the chromosome has no information, but it can decode the information it receives. So when you have blue eyes, it's because you have the chromosomes in your DNA for blue eyes. Not the information, mind you, but the antennas that pick up the information that tell your body that you have blue eyes. This again gets us back to this signal, this energy, this transmission we are all getting 1 trillion times a second from the center of the earth. Not just you and me, but your cat, your dog, the mice in the house, the planet, the blood in your veins, the sun in the sky. It's all getting this information at the same time. But because of the physical design of each of us, we're only receiving that information that has something to do with us, which is why you have blue eyes. Well, this then, of course, leads us to the concept of continental drift, which Western scientists never could explain. That made, in a way that made sense. Again, they're the last in line for any kind of logical reason, and I'm sorry to say it, but it's true. Scientists in the West, I worked at NASA for 5 years, and these were really, really nice people. They became family. But you could always tell how frustrated and angry they were because they couldn't tell the truth. They couldn't explore anything that was real because the people who gave them their paychecks said they could not do that. So you either do what the person who's paying you tells you to do, or you work at McDonald's. There's not a lot of places a scientist can work. You can work for the government, you can work for a university, or you can work for a corporation. If you work for the government, that's obvious the government's paying you. If you work for a university, well, the university gets grants from the government, so the government's still paying you. If you work for a corporation, the corporation has contracts with the government, so the government's still paying you. So as a scientist, not a lot of options. You do what your boss tells you to do. You talk about what your boss tells you to talk about. Anything else you discover, you ignore. That's just the way it is. So anyway, Western scientists have never been able to explain continental drift on our world. It never made any sense. They tried to tell us that the plates that we live on, the continents we live on, are floating on lava, and they just sort of drift anywhere they want to go. This, of course, never made any sense. It's not only now that Western scientists, again, I'm sorry, the last people in line to get any kind of information passed down to them. Western scientists have finally were allowed to admit that the Earth is physically growing. The Earth is getting physically bigger. It's like a balloon and you're blowing air into it. It's getting bigger. Good way to explain this is blow up a balloon. Take a felt tip marker, sort of roughly draw on the continents on the balloon. Now, put some more air in the balloon. That's what the Earth is doing. The Earth is getting bigger. But to grow, the Earth needs a source of energy, which gets us back to the broadcast of energy. Trillions of times a second. that's bursting out at us from the core of our own galaxy, hitting the Earth, the stars, the planets. That's a lot of power. And if you're very, very old, and you live a very, very long time like the Earth does, you can actually see the physical effects of that energy. The planet is growing bigger. As the planet physically gets bigger, the continents, naturally enough, move away from each other. And yes, scientists were actually right when they said that originally the Earth only had one giant landmass and almost no oceans. So that part was true. So again, to tell a lie, you've got to have some truth in there to make it reasonable. So yes, at one time, the Earth only had one large landmass, but the Earth was considerably smaller then, and it was solid all the way through down to the core. Another lie, we've been told. But the Earth grew. As the Earth grew, that molten core at the center of the Earth went from being a molten core and a solid object to a sun hanging in the middle of a hollow Earth, which is what happens to all planets. Again, what happens on Earth happens everywhere in this galaxy, probably in the entire universe. The Earth is electrical. You and I are electrical. The universe is electrical. And I doubt seriously God had multiple blueprints for what happens on Earth and then what happens on Alpha Centauri. It's the same process. So if the Earth has been growing and expanding outwards, it originally had a solid core and the center was molten. As the Earth grew, the central core, which was a molten heart of the Earth, is now a central sun, and the Earth itself is hollow. Now, how can the Earth be hollow? Gravity comes from the center of the Earth. No, it doesn't. Turns out that gravity is not what we thought at all, surprisingly. And again, Western scientists, poor souls, I feel so sorry for these people. Western scientists tested what the level of gravity was, what the flow of it was, and they figured that the gravity came from the center of the Earth. They did a very simple experiment. They drilled 2 wells at different parts of the Earth. They hung very, very, very long lines down these wells with weights at the bottom. Now, they figured, since both of these wells were aimed, of course, towards the center of the Earth, I mean, you dig down, you're aiming for the center of the Earth. They figured that if they hung these lines, I forget how long they were, miles long or something, they figured that they could gauge the amount of gravity there was on the Earth as the lines began to swing towards each other because they were both aiming for the center of the Earth. What they discovered, much to their horror and to the terror of our masters, was that instead of the lines swinging towards each other from these 2 separate wells, drilled at 2 separate points on the Earth, because they knew, quote-unquote, the center of gravity of the Earth was the center of the Earth, the molten core, the lines actually swung away from each other, which meant that the center of the Earth was not the center of the gravity. It meant that gravity, the center of gravity for this planet, was outside of the Earth, not inside of it. So gravity was completely opposite of what we thought it was. And the scientists were so horrified, and our masters were so horrified, that all knowledge of this experiment was, erased from mankind's knowledge, at least, for the most part. And the wells were covered up, and no one ever spoke of it. You can find it if you look really hard on the internet. You can find reports on it. So gravity actually exists around the Earth, like, a shell, a bubble. And so the force of gravity does not pull us towards us. It pushes us away from it, because the center of gravity is above us, not below us, which is how you can have a hollow Earth, because the Earth grows from the energy generated from the core of the galaxy. The Sun, which is now in the center of this hollow Earth, well, all planets are hollow, this size, this old. That's why the Sun now exists inside of the Earth, because it's being held there by the force of gravity, which is not on the inside of the Earth, it's on the outside. All of this energy, in the form of information, is being broadcast to you, to me, the planet, the stars, from the center of the universe. That's a tremendous amount of energy. And the same energy that causes the Earth to grow causes you to have blue eyes. And if it's happening on our Earth, it's happening to every planet in the galaxy. God does not change the basic plan, the basic model of her electrically powered, electrically based universe just for you and me. It doesn't happen. And so tonight, I thought we would chat about 1 trillion times a second, as we have. Excuse me. We've been talking about the steps leading up to the conclusion of the story. And the next step, the 5th step, if you're keeping count, let's say, for the sake of argument, you live for thousands and thousands of years. We know the Earth is billions and billions of years old, and it continues to grow. Well, the event on the Earth when the dead brown dwarf star passes through the plane of our solar system and flips us end for end, and because the universe is electrically based, there's a huge discharge of electrical energy from planet to planet. Lightning leaping from planet to planet. Look at the surface of Mars, you can see it quite clearly. Well, this electrical discharge dry cleans the Earth, basically reboots us. And we have a fresh new planet. Of course, 7 billion people have just been wiped out, but that's, neither here nor there. But all of a sudden we've got lots of oxygen. We can live longer because now our bodies are no longer suffocating. Oxygen-rich environment means we live a very long time. And as the dead brown dwarf star continues on its way out of our solar system, our magnetic field increases. You need a strong magnetic field and a lot of oxygen to be healthy and to live a very long time. So let's say, long time ago, billions of years ago, the Earth was slightly smaller, physically smaller. There was a lot more magnetic material available because it had to cover a smaller area. And let's say you were a human being back then and you lived for thousands and thousands of years and you became intelligent and aware, and you artificially came up with ways to even increase your lifespan beyond that. Now, during these thousands and thousands, maybe tens of thousands of years, you're still receiving these bursts of information, of energy from the center of our galaxy. Trillions of times a second, this energy is hitting us. And yet now, instead of living 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years, you're living 100,000 years. What would that burst of energy do to you? You'd probably keep growing. That's where you get giant humans. And the skeletons of giant humans, and I'm talking from 14 foot tall, which there's evidence all over the world, skeletons are being found almost every day, to 100 foot tall, where they still find skeletons, but the information is so hysterically suppressed, it's hard to find. Religion suppresses it, the media suppresses it. But if you lived for hundreds of thousands of years, and you're being exposed to these bursts of energy from the center of the universe, your body would grow and continue to grow, just as the Earth continues to grow. So that leads us to the 6th step. Where did the dinosaurs go? They evolved and they became intelligent. They were here for 65 million years. So now what happens on Earth also happens throughout our whole galaxy, probably the entire universe, because we are actually, in the same soap bubble. So if reptiles, whether evolution evolved them or God created them in her experimentations, they came first. And they probably came first in the rest of the galaxy. So how would a race of intelligent reptiles feel when God, or nature, suddenly created human beings? I mean, would reptiles living in their cities, going to the movies, going to dances, going on a picnic, how would they feel if some intelligent pigs or cows, which is basically what you and I are, our DNA, well, we're also dinosaur, but that's a different story. How would a bunch of intelligent reptiles feel if some pigs and cows started walking upright, talking, building cities of their own? Well, If they're like us, and it's a pretty safe bet, 98% of them wouldn't care. Because 98% of them would probably be cattle, just like 98% of you and I are cattle. But they're the dominant species in the galaxy. Yeah, okay, so we got new neighbors. Let's hope they don't lower property values. Everything would have been okay if just evolution was involved with this. Yeah, there'd be disagreements. We'd eat them, they'd eat us. These things happen. But there wouldn't be any big problems until the concept of religion gets involved. In this case, religion gets down to a lover's quarrel. God and her lover, Satan, Yahweh, broke up. Why? Because God continued to evolve. She started probably from light, tried living in a material world, in a physical form, in a very, very low frequency, and just worked her way up the ladder. Went from a very high frequency, experimented with a very low frequency, and was experiencing things as she increased her frequency back up to her normal level. During which time she created the reptiles, the angels, then the physical reptiles, the reptilians. And Yahweh, of course, was an angel, which means she was herself created as a reptile in a higher frequency so she could be what we would consider an angel. But God continued to evolve, and Yahweh, her girlfriend, her lover, would not or could not evolve. She considered herself to be perfect as a reptile. And then Yahweh, in a fit of jealous rage, turned to the angels and turned some of them against God. And since they were basically reptile and she was reptile, they at least understood each other. And God, trying to be nice about the whole thing and probably terribly embarrassed that her girlfriend that she made was such a bitch, did not destroy them, which she probably could have with not even a thought. But rather she allowed them to leave her universe, probably hoping against hope that someday her petty, jealous, mean-spirited girlfriend would grow up and be a woman instead of being a petty little child. But somewhere along the way, Satan, Yahweh, tried to create life on her own, based on her own model of perfection, the reptilian form, before she was cast out. This is where the H.P. Lovecraft Ancient Old Ones come from, and how her experiments in creating life, and since she didn't bother to learn as God had bothered to learn, since Yahweh would not experience all the different aspects of the universe, she just decided she knew and that was it. She created monstrosities. The Ancient Old Ones were creatures miles tall, gibbering, slavering, hateful, destructive things, mindless creatures. At that point, I'm guessing Amalek, God, had had enough, threw her lover, Yahweh, out of her universe into the nothing that exists between the soap bubbles, and all of her fallen angels, her reptiles, went with her. Now Yahweh, the devil, and her fallen angels, demons, who actually are just reptiles, and for some reason we can't call something what it really is, they're reptiles, they're not demons. They're reptiles. They can't physically re-enter the universe, but their thoughts can. Just like radio waves can reach out and touch your car radio. It doesn't mean that the DJ at the country western station is sitting in the car with you. He's still back at the radio station, but his thoughts, his words, can reach out through space and reach your car radio. That's all telepathy is. That's all what people who are psychic could do. They simply use their brains to broadcast information. That's all it is. It's not supernatural. It's just science. It's physics. So the devil can't actually physically come here, but she can actually reach in to this bubble universe where you and I live with her thoughts. And she's quite powerful. So she can influence the reptilian races that would normally have existed peacefully with us in this universe. Some, the devil convinced to go to war against her lover, those that were still here. Others, well, she needed vehicles. She needed remote-controlled cars, which is all the human or the reptilian body is to her. But they already had drivers, so she had to yank the drivers out of the cars, the bodies, and take over. Eating them, probably. And she made puppets. I mean, look at Obama. He's a puppet. It's kind of sad, but it's sort of true. And yeah, it's hard to believe. But again, so are radio waves. But you can use your car radio. Microwaves are hard to believe. I mean, if you stop and think about it, what the heck is a microwave? You don't know. You have no idea. But your cell phone works. It's hard to believe, but it's true. Which gets us back to why Earth. Why did they bring their war here? Why did these two girlfriends bring their war to our doorstep? You and I in our present form have lived on this planet for 2.5 billion years, side by side with giants, mostly the 14-foot variety, which you can find evidence of if you just do a search on the internet for out-of-place artifacts. Or you could do something stunningly brilliant and visit your local library. If there's a college or a university, great. If there's a local repository library, go there, make friends with the reference librarian, and ask them these questions. Says, could you help me find information on this? They'll be thrilled. All this information we've just chatted about, you can find for yourself on the internet or at a good library. We've been here a very long time. We need to grow up. Maybe the earth really was the home of the human race, the original human race. Maybe this is where God came to give birth to her third-born children, you and me. Maybe from here, human beings spread throughout the galaxy. Or maybe God gave birth to her third-born children on many different planets. I have no idea. Maybe this war between girlfriends is everywhere. And since you and I are trapped in our own little world, we can't see what's happening anywhere else. It's kind of like when you live in the country and you can't get TV or radio stations, before satellite TV showed up. And after a while, you're living all alone. You just get to the point where you figure you're the only one on the whole planet. And then you're walking down a dusty road one day and you find an old newspaper, half buried in the dust. And you've got nothing better to do with your time because you're all alone, you figure, on this whole planet. You teach yourself how to read this language you've never seen before. You then realize you're not alone. And your mind opens. And suddenly your whole world expands. This must be how it feels like when archaeologists find records, not printed on paper, but carved in stone, which takes a lot of effort, by the way. So somebody really wanted you to have this information. But these are stones that are thousands of years old. These carvings are thousands of years old. And these archaeologists, they teach themselves to read a language that's been dead that whole time. And suddenly their world expands. So here on our world, we have ancient records. We consider something ancient to be, 8,000 years old, which is sort of funny considering that you and I have been here for 2.5 billion years. But we consider, you and I, ancient history as being 8,000 years old. So you and I can trace our civilization, say here in the United States, which is just the modern version of the Roman Empire, which itself came from the Egyptian Empire, which itself came from the Babylonian Empire, which itself came from the Sumerian Empire, which is as far back as we can go in our history. Even though we've been here for 2.5 billion years, we only have a written history that we know of that goes back about 8,000. So we literally know nothing about our true history on this world. A good place to go for stuff like this is a gentleman by the name of Jordan Maxwell. jordanmaxwell.com. Brilliant fellow. He's been doing this for more than 50 years. If we really wanted to fix our country and democracy really existed, we would elect Jordan Maxwell to be president. You can also find lots of videos on him on, of course, YouTube. Also on rense.com, R-E-N-S-E. You need to understand that words and symbols in our culture have specific meanings that you and I have no idea what they are. Jordan Maxwell does. Look this guy up. He's brilliant. Go to the rense.com just in general, because if you want a real education on all of this, you go to rense.com. But anyway, 8,000 years ago, the Sumerian culture, and somebody made a real effort. They carved these in stone, and that's not easy to do. But the Sumerians, or they make clay tablets, that's another story. But the Sumerians, they tell a story of a race of reptiles that came to the earth and genetically added their DNA into the local primates and made what they called primitive workers. Now, originally, people thought, well, they must have been talking about apes. And from the apes, you and I evolved. What if that's not true? What if the reptiles who came here, or who were already here and living inside of the surface of the earth, or better yet, inside of the hollow earth with their own sun, which we've already talked about as really easily being possible once you understand the simple physics of the thing. What if, right after the last event, the reptiles came forth from wherever they were, and they deliberately added their DNA to ours, mixed us up? At that time, right after the last event, these were probably savages. These are people barely able to get by, but they were survivors of the previous event where the earth flipped end for end. And the reptiles came and forced their genetic material into our bodies, mixing our races. Why would anybody bother to do that? Which gets us back to love. Well, if you're an insanely jealous soul, and you're insanely jealous of your younger brothers and sisters, if you believe that your mother, the mother of both of you, loves your younger brothers and sisters more than she loves you, and you believe she loves them more than you because they're different from you, you're a reptile, they're human, but you have the same mother, what would you do in a jealous fit of rage? You'd want to change them. You'd want to make them more like you. And then maybe your mother would love you more and love them less. This is what this billion-year-old war is all about. Love. The desire to be loved, the craving for affection from your lover, from your mother. And in this case, for Yahweh, she's the same woman. God, Alamech, created Yahweh, her lover, the devil, Lucifer, when Alamech, God, was in her reptilian form. She was experimenting with different forms, different frequencies, different vibrations, inside of the bubble universe she herself had created. And the devil, Satan, Yahweh, wants to be loved best by her mother, who is also her lover, who is also her creator. And Yahweh will do anything to destroy what God has made, just to prove that God is wrong. And that includes destroying you and me, destroying the home where God made us, our earth. And after she's destroyed the earth, she takes her war against the humans, the third-born children of her lover. She takes her war across the galaxy, across the universe. And she'll keep doing this until God admits God was wrong. That is why our masters hate us so, and why they fear us, and why they are terrified of us. Because if you and I were made in God's image when she was changing, evolving, growing, experimenting, You and I, not only being different than our reptilian brothers and sisters, physically different, but you and I were created at a different frequency than they were. And the noises that you and I make with our thoughts, simply by existing, the thoughts that create the universe we all live in, is probably driving our reptilian family crazy. A good example of this is, do you know why cats hunt mice? Not because they're hungry. It's because that mice generate a sound. They make a noise. They exist at a frequency, a vibration, that drives cats crazy. This sound, this vibration, this frequency that mice make annoys cats to the point where they have to hunt the mice down and kill them, tear them to pieces, just so the noise will stop. And maybe that's part of the problem our reptilian family members have with you and I. Because you and I vibrate, our thoughts vibrate at a different frequency than theirs. And our reptilian cousins, our older brothers and sisters, can hear that, and it drives them crazy. It drives them into a killing frenzy. So they have to come after us. And yet, you and I, our thoughts create the universe around us. You and I are an integral part of the universe that God made, as are the reptiles. Maybe this is part of the reason that the reptilians, our masters, will do anything to hurt us, make us suffer, destroy our souls, break us. They feed us drugs in our food that we buy at the grocery store, we get at McDonald's, which is plastic and poisons. So we can't think clearly. And if we can't think clearly, we can't make that noise that drives them crazy. Our thoughts. Our thoughts are muddled and confused. So that doesn't bother them. But if we can think for ourselves, if we can think rationally and clearly, not only do we create the universe, we drive them nuts. Which means at a certain point, this is just revenge. And the fact that you and I, we can follow God in her evolution. We can change. We can grow. We can become more than we are now. We can become like the angels. We can learn to be what they already are. But would require us learning to exist at a higher frequency, living at a higher vibration than we do now. And from there, I've no idea. But if you can see the universe alive all around you, I will bet you money that there are doors all around us that will open through time, through space, and we can walk to any place in the universe in the blink of an eye if we could just see the doors, the tunnels in the sky that exist all around us. And if we walk through those doors because we can see them, we'll change, because our minds will have expanded to see new things and learn to do things in new ways. But if you follow Satan, Yahweh, then you exist outside of the universe itself. You literally live in hell. You live in the nothingness. But if you follow the devil, if you follow Yahweh, this jealous, spiteful woman, if you follow her of your own free will, you reject evolution. You reject the possibility of change. You choose instead to leave the universe when you die and to serve your master in hell. I've actually met people. I personally have met people, human beings with souls, who are waiting for that chance. They're looking forward to dying and going to hell and serving their master. And there's the look on their eyes, it's that sort of religious frenzy you see in people. But none of this is religion. This is history. So I ask the question, why? And then I follow the evidence to where it goes, and I didn't see any of this coming. Religion is a sickness. It's a disease that's deliberately spread amongst us, so we give up our rights, our minds, our souls, our free will, And even the best people can be fooled into tricked into serving something terrible. We all know the truth. We're born with it. We know the difference between right and wrong. We don't need anyone to tell us. We don't need religion. And I'm fairly convinced that evolution starts with I am. I am myself, I am no one else. Because I've seen that with my own eyes. And it doesn't start with anything difficult. It's not Moses with the Ten Commandments. It's not the parting of the Red Sea. It's nothing deep or mystical or transcendent. It comes with something so simple it's almost laughable. I decided to stop poisoning my own body. And when I gave my body the opportunity to be clean, then I gave my mind the opportunity to think clearly, which gave me the opportunity to see the world the way it truly is. And if you can learn to listen, just learn to listen to yourself. Listen to yourself. Listen to your body. Listen to the people around you. If you can be still enough inside of yourself, you can actually hear the earth. And from there, you can listen to the entire universe because it's singing all around you. Even Western scientists know that. So maybe what evolution really is to first know who you are. And then listen to the music, the waves of energy, the thoughts, the memories that exist forever in the universe. And all you have to do is listen, and you can hear it. And then it's only a guess. But I'm guessing you'll be able to see the doors that exist all around us, that can take us to another world, to another frequency, another reality, another vibration. And you know what? You don't need me for any of this. It's all on the internet, or again, better still, go to your local library. Hold the book in your hand. Make friends with the reference librarians there. Find one who will say, hey, that sounds cool, let's look that up. And just talk to them. You could do this all on your own. It's up to you. May you live as long as you wish. May you love as long as you live. For the 2012fad.com, this is Charlie Bluehawk. The 2012 Fad is brought to you by Coffee and Blood, Love Letters Between the Dead, a series of 5 erotica horror novels about a fallen angel fighting his way back to regain his own soul, and how the CIA war against the human race, their black magic, captures and traps him in the body of a mind-controlled slave designed to hunt down and to kill their god, their Satan.